A millionaire abandoned his old racehorse in the desert, condemning him to a solitary death. 5 years later, he returns and finds the animal not only alive, but transformed into the symbol of a renowned sanctuary. Dark secrets and an incredible journey of redemption reveal how an act of cruelty unleashed a revolution of compassion. Prepare for a story that will transform your view on regret and forgiveness. Subscribe, leave your like, and comment where you're watching from. What happens when power and greed confront compassion and resilience? In the heart of the Sonoran Desert, where the sun beats down on the earth and only the strongest survive, a story of cruelty and redemption was about to unfold. A story that makes us question, how far can human cruelty go? And more importantly, how far can the power of compassion reach? Imagine a typical day when the sun seemed determined to set the desert stones ablaze. The air shimmered with suffocating heat, while the silence was broken only by the distant sound of a powerful engine. A luxurious pickup truck advanced slowly down the dusty road, leaving behind a red trail that rose like a cloud of blood against the merciless blue sky. Behind the wheel, an impeccably dressed man, his face marked by lines of expression that told stories of ruthless business deals and cold decisions. Richard Montgomery, one of the country's richest men, wore an Italian suit that seemed to mock the desert heat. His dark sunglasses reflected the desolate landscape, hiding eyes that had long lost the ability to be moved by anything other than numbers in a bank account. Behind the truck, a trailer swayed precariously on the uneven road. Inside it, an animal that had once known days of glory. A golden-coated horse previously gleaming like liquid gold under the lights of the world's most prestigious racetracks. Now, his coat was dull. His eyes, once lively and alert, appeared glazed, like dusty windows of an abandoned house. His body, which had once been the perfect expression of strength and speed, now bowed under the weight of years and neglect. Montgomery stopped the vehicle at a seemingly random spot in the desert, a place far enough from the main road that no one would witness what he was about to do. The silence weighed like lead when he turned off the engine. For a fleeting moment, he hesitated. A flash of memory crossed his mind. The horse, Golden Lightning, as he was called, crossing the finish line in Louisville, securing him millions of dollars in profit and headlines in every sports newspaper. The hesitation lasted only the time it takes to sigh. He's getting too old, costing too much trouble, he muttered to himself as he got out of the truck, his Italian leather boots raising small clouds of dust. Nature takes its course, that's how it should be. With mechanical movements, he opened the trailer and pulled the animal out. The horse resisted, confused, his hooves pawing uncertainly at the arid ground. The businessman impatiently unfastened the ties, gave the animal a light slap on the flank, and got back into his vehicle without looking back. "Goodbye, old friend. You gave me what I needed," he said, more to himself than to the abandoned animal. The truck pulled away, leaving behind only dust and an aging, disoriented horse in the middle of the merciless desert. A slow, solitary death would be his inevitable fate, or so Montgomery thought. What he didn't know, what he couldn't imagine as he drove back to his air-conditioned mansion, was that watchful eyes had witnessed his cruelty. From a modest house on the arid slopes, a woman watched everything through weather-beaten binoculars. Elena Ramirez, 68 years old, daughter and granddaughter of horse trainers, heir to ancestral knowledge that traced back to the cowboys, chuck ranchers, from northern Mexico. Her wrinkled, calloused hands tightened on the binoculars. Her dark eyes gleamed with indignation. She knew that kind of man well. Rich people who treated animals like disposable objects, just as they had treated people, her throughout her life. "Not again," she whispered, her voice carrying the musical accent of her ancestors. "Not this time." With an energy that defied her age, Elena grabbed the keys to her old pickup truck, a water canteen, and a worn rope. She knew the desert like the back of her hand, had learned to respect it and to survive in it. She knew the animal would have only a few hours to live under that relentless sun. When she found the horse, he was already stumbling, dehydrated and exhausted, trying in vain to find shade under a twisted cactus. She approached slowly, murmuring soft words, In the musical Spanish of her childhood, it wasn't the first time she had rescued an abandoned animal, but she had never seen such a magnificent specimen reduced to such a state. "Tranquilo, hermoso, tranquilo," she whispered as she offered water in her cupped hands. "Life isn't over for you yet." The animal, initially frightened, surrendered to the kindness of that stranger. There was something in her voice, in her scent, that inspired trust. With infinite patience, Elena managed to guide him to her truck. The challenge was convincing him to get into the small, rusty trailer she kept for transporting hay bales. More than an hour passed in that silent struggle against the animal's fear, and against the merciless sun that burned both their skin. Back at the ranch, Elena immediately called the local veterinarian. Dr. Hernandez was a young man, graduated from a major city, who had returned to the region to care for the animals of the rural community. His expression turned serious as he examined the horse. "Donna Elena, this animal is in critical condition," he explained, removing his stethoscope from his ears. "Severe malnutrition, dehydration, advanced arthritis, heart problems. Frankly, it would be more humane to euthanize him now." Elena looked at the doctor with the intensity that only a lifetime in the desert can lend to a gaze. "And since when do we take the easy way out in this land, doctor? My father used to say that giving up on an animal is giving up on a part of your own soul." The doctor sighed, recognizing the determination of that woman whom everyone in the region respected. "I'll do what I can, but I don't promise miracles. It would be an extraordinary feat if he survives the month." "Miracles, doctor, happen at the hands of those who refuse to accept the inevitable," Elena replied, her wrinkled face softening into an enigmatic smile. In the following weeks, Elena practically moved into the stable. She improvised a bed of hay bales next to the stall where she had put the animal. Every 3 hours, day and night, she fed him a special mixture, medicinal herbs her grandmother had taught her to identify in the desert, combined with modern nutrients that the veterinarian, skeptical but compassionate, provided. "You need a name," Elena would say as she massaged the animal's sore legs with an aromatic ointment. "You can't keep being the abandoned horse. You will be Spirit, because that's what I see in your eyes, even when your body fails. An untamed spirit." Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Spirit began to respond to the treatment. First, it was the spark that returned to his eyes. Then, his appetite improved. In a month, to Dr. Hernandez's surprise, the horse could already stand for longer periods without showing extreme pain. "I don't know what to say, Donna Elena. I've never seen anything like this in my entire career," the doctor confessed, marveling at the improvement in the animal's heartbeat and breathing. Elena merely smiled, keeping to herself the secret of entire nights spent whispering stories into Spirit's ear, of old songs sung in Spanish, while the stars wheeled in the desert sky. The power of compassion was not something that could be measured with stethoscopes or described in medical reports. 6 months passed like sand through fingers. Spirit now walked around the small ranch with cautious but steady steps. His coat gradually began to shine again under the sun, thanks to careful baths and daily brushings. He still carried the marks of abandonment and the years, but there was a restored dignity in his posture. It was around this time that fate played another unexpected card in that extraordinary story. Miguel, an old friend of Elena's who worked as a groom at a large stud farm in the city, came to visit her. Upon seeing the horse in the pasture, he stopped, stunned. "Dios mío, Elena, do you know who this horse is?" Elena, who was washing some worn blankets in a trough next to the stable, looked at him intrigued. "He's Spirit, the horse I rescued from the desert 6 months ago." Miguel approached the animal with reverence, barely believing his eyes. "This is Golden Lightning, the international champion, winner of the Kentucky Derby and over 10 international competitions. He was worth millions." As Miguel recounted the story of the famous racehorse, Elena began to put the pieces together. The man in the luxurious car, the calculated cruelty, the abandonment of an animal that no longer served his purposes. A quick internet search confirmed her suspicions. Richard Montgomery, real estate mogul, known for his collection of racehorses and his empire of luxury resorts. "So that's how he thanked you for all the millions he earned?" Elena murmured to Spirit, stroking his neck. "Don't worry, you're home now." The story could have ended there, with the recovered horse living out his final years peacefully on Elena's small ranch. But fate, that unpredictable weaver, had other plans. News of the miraculous rescue began to spread in the small community. The annual Equestrian Traditions Festival was approaching, a celebration where the old vaquero cowboy traditions were honored. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Elena decided to enter Spirit as a special guest, not to compete, but as a living symbol of resilience. Jorge Ramirez, Elena's nephew and a local journalist, saw a story there that needed to be told. With his aunt's permission, he wrote a moving article about Spirit's abandonment and recovery. The text, accompanied by before and after photographs of the animal, captured the public's imagination. In 3 days, it had been shared thousands of times on social media. Suddenly, Elena Ramirez's small ranch became the center of a media storm. Journalists from national television networks appeared at her door. Donations began to arrive from all corners of the country. Letters and emails from admirers flooded her mailbox. Among them, a proposal that would change everything. An animal protection organization offered funding to transform the ranch into a sanctuary for elderly and abandoned horses. Elena, who had always struggled to keep her inherited family land, against the pressure of real estate speculators, saw not just a solution to her financial problems, but the realization of an old dream, a place where her family's ancestral knowledge could be preserved and shared, where discarded animals could find dignity in their final years. "What do you think, Spirit?" she asked the horse as they watched the reddish sunset over the distant mountains together. "Ready for a new life? To have many companions?" The animal responded with a soft whinny, as if understanding every word. The following months were ones of intense transformation. With the donations received and the support of the organization, new stables were built, following traditional sustainable techniques adapted to desert life. 10 elderly horses, rescued from situations of abandonment or mistreatment, found a new home there. Elena, with the help of enthusiastic volunteers, implemented an educational program, welcoming local schools and teaching children about respect for animals and the regional equestrian traditions. Meanwhile, Spirit's story continued to spread, now amplified by the national media. Volunteer lawyers filed a lawsuit against Richard Montgomery for animal cruelty and abandonment, a practice that, as was later discovered, was not isolated. Other breeders came forward to report similar incidents involving animals the businessman discarded when they were no longer profitable. Montgomery, concerned about his severely damaged public image, tried what had always worked for him: the power of money. He sent representatives to the ranch, now called Spirit of the Desert Sanctuary, offering an astronomical sum to repurchase the horse and end the lawsuit. Elena received the men in suits on the porch of her simple house. She offered them fresh water and listened to the proposal in silence. When they finished, her dark eyes shone with an intensity that made the representatives shift uncomfortably in their chairs. "Gentlemen, there are things in this world that your boss still hasn't learned cannot be bought," she replied calmly. "Dignity is one of them. Redemption is another. Go back and tell Mr. Montgomery that Spirit is not for sale, not for all the money in the world." The refusal became public, further amplifying interest in the story. Documentarians sought out Elena to film the sanctuary's work. Veterinary medicine experts became interested in the traditional techniques she combined with modern treatments. The small ranch in the desert was gradually transforming into a reference center for the treatment of elderly equines. But not everything was smooth sailing on Elena and Spirit's path. 15 months after the rescue, a severe drought hit the region, the worst in decades. The wells began to dry up, the price of feed skyrocketed, and many volunteers had to leave in search of work in larger cities. The sanctuary, now housing 15 rescued horses, faced its worst crisis. Elena, sitting at the kitchen table late at night, found that the numbers didn't add up. Donations had decreased over time. As always happens when a story is no longer news, the sanctuary's financial reserves were rapidly emptying. For the first time since the beginning of that journey, tears of despair ran down the woman's wrinkled. "Fumisu, what will we do, spirit?" she murmured to the horse, who now had the privilege of coming into the house like an old family friend. "I can't abandon them like you were abandoned. But how will we continue?" It was at this critical moment that the improbable happened. Children from the local school, who regularly visited the sanctuary as part of the educational program, organized a fundraising campaign on their own. It started small, selling crafts inspired by Spirit's story at local fairs. But it quickly grew, crossing state lines and reaching national television networks. A famous country singer who had visited the sanctuary months earlier announced she would donate part of the profits from her next album to the cause. Animal feed companies offered donations. An agricultural university proposed a partnership to study the treatment methods developed by Elena. But the most surprising turn of events was yet to come. Exactly 2 years after that fateful day in the desert, the sanctuary's security cameras recorded the arrival of an ordinary, unpretentious car. From the vehicle stepped a man Elena recognized immediately, although they had never been formally introduced: Richard Montgomery. He was not the same man she had watched abandon Spirit. His shoulders were slumped, as if carrying an invisible weight. His eyes, previously hidden by dark sunglasses, were now exposed, vulnerable to the world. He stopped outside the fence, watching Spirit graze peacefully under the setting sun. Elena could have called security, could have expelled that man who represented everything she despised. But something in his gaze made her hesitate. There was an expression there that she knew well, having lived 7 decades in this world: regret. With firm steps, she crossed the pasture to the gate where Montgomery remained motionless. "Mr. Montgomery," she said simply, "what brings you to our sanctuary?" The man seemed surprised to be recognized. He ran a hand through his hair, now with more gray hairs than Elena remembered seeing in newspaper photos. "I needed to see with my own eyes," he replied, his voice betraying an emotion that seemed foreign to a man accustomed to cold negotiations. "I needed to know if it was true." "What exactly?" "That he survived, that he's well, that you were wrong?" Elena completed without hostility in her voice, just the wisdom of someone who knows the winding paths of the human heart. Montgomery nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the golden horse grazing peacefully a few yards away. Can I see him up close?" Against all the silent protests of her reason, Elena opened the gate. She led the unexpected visitor through the pasture, aware of the curious glances from volunteers and visitors who recognized the infamous businessman from the news. Spirit raised his head as they approached, his ears flicking attentively. "He'll recognize me," Montgomery murmured, a slight tremor in his voice. "He'll hate me." "Horses don't hold a grudge like we humans do," Elena replied. "They live in the present. It's one of the many lessons we can learn from them." To the surprise of everyone present, when they got close, Spirit calmly approached his former owner. There was no fear, no anger in his behavior, just the serene curiosity of an animal who had found peace after much suffering. Montgomery extended a hesitant hand, touching the neck of the animal he had once discarded as a worthless object. His eyes filled with tears that he didn't bother to hide. "How could I?" he murmured, more to himself than to Elena. "How could I do this?" Elena watched in silence that moment of intimate confrontation between a man and his conscience. She had witnessed many transformations throughout her life, but few as profound as the one she saw unfolding before her eyes. "Ms. Ramirez," Montgomery said finally, facing her with a vulnerability that defied the public image of the ruthless businessman. "I know nothing can erase what I did. I know you probably despise me, and rightly so. But something has changed in me since this story came to light, something I don't even fully understand myself." Elena waited, knowing that sometimes silence is the wisest answer. "I want to do what's right," he continued. "Not for my image, not to end the lawsuit, but because Because I need to. In the following weeks, the local community witnessed what many called a miracle. Richard Montgomery, in a press conference held at the sanctuary itself, publicly announced his regret. More than that, he committed to fully fund the expansion of the Spirit of the Desert sanctuary and to use his influence to pass stricter laws against animal abandonment. What I've seen here, he declared to the cameras, has made me question not only my actions, but the values upon which I built my entire life. I discovered that there are riches that cannot be measured in dollars. To prove his words weren't empty, Montgomery announced that he would transform one of his properties, a 500-acre ranch in the neighboring state, into a second sanctuary for abandoned horses, and that he would use his resources to create a research center in partnership with universities, focused on treatments for elderly equines, combining traditional knowledge and modern medicine. Montgomery's transformation caused skepticism in many and inspiration in others. Some saw him as an opportunist trying to clean up his image. Others believed in the sincerity of his change. Elena, with the wisdom of her years, knew that the truth likely lay somewhere between these extremes. Like almost everything in life, time, the only truly impartial judge, took it upon itself to show the authenticity of that transformation. Montgomery kept every promise made that day. More than that, he became a tireless advocate for animal welfare, using his influence to change practices in the equestrian industry and inspire other businessmen to reconsider their ethical responsibilities. 5 full years after that fateful day in the desert, Elena's small ranch had transformed into the country's largest equine recovery and conservation center. Spirit, now 27 years old, an extraordinary age for a horse, became a national symbol for the fight for animal rights. His story was taught in schools, inspired books and documentaries. The Center for Research in Traditional and Modern Equine Medicine, attached to the sanctuary, developed revolutionary treatments that saved horses previously considered beyond recovery. Veterinarians from around the world came to learn from Elena, now considered an authority on the treatment of elderly equines, although she insisted she was just a woman from the desert who had learned to listen to the wisdom of the ancients. On Sais, a particularly serene afternoon, as the sun began its descent on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Elena and Montgomery sat on the ranch porch. Spirit grazed peacefully in the field ahead, his golden silhouette outlined against the flaming sky. "You know, Richard," Elena said, her eyes contemplating the distant horizon, "when I found him that day, I thought I was just saving a horse. I didn't imagine I would be starting a revolution of compassion." Montgomery nodded, his face marked by expression lines that now told a different story. "And I didn't imagine that by abandoning him, I would be inadvertently saving myself. Sometimes I wonder who rescued whom in this story." Elena smiled, the kind of smile that carries the wisdom of many seasons. "Perhaps it is always like that. Perhaps when we extend a hand to rescue another creature, we are also rescuing ourselves." In the field, Spirit raised his head, as if feeling the weight of that moment. The desert wind blew softly, carrying the smell of earth, of life, and of possibilities. The wildflowers, which had bloomed after the recent rains, rippled like a multicolored carpet stretching as far as the eye could see. Life is like the desert. Elena reflected, her words almost lost in the breeze. It seems arid and unforgiving at first glance. But when you learn to truly look, you discover it is filled with miracles waiting to bloom. All it takes is a little rain, a little care, a little faith. And so, as the sun finally surrendered to the horizon, the story of an abandoned horse, determined woman, and a transformed man continued to spread like seeds carried by the desert wind, teaching everyone who encountered it a truth as old as the mountains, that compassion is the most revolutionary of forces, capable of transforming not just individual lives, but the very fabric of the society in which we live. Because in the end, as Spirit taught us, it doesn't matter how many times we fall or are abandoned. What matters is finding the strength to rise once more, to move forward with dignity, and perhaps along the way, to inspire others to do the same. This is the true journey of the Spirit, not just to survive but to flourish, not just to forgive but to transform, not just to exist but to inspire. And so the story continues, like ripples in the desert sand after the wind has passed, infinite in its possibilities, eternal in its message of hope. For as long as there are hearts willing to open to compassion, there will always be new chapters to be written, new lives to be transformed, new miracles waiting to bloom in the desert of human existence.